Ms. Bierman, my mother is from Camden, South Carolina, and I'm just listening to you speak, and I'm just thinking of my Aunt Lucille. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Bringing a great memory. Folks on this panel know that I'm very interested in dyslexia. Affects 1 in 5 of our students. Here is an article from the Journal of Pediatrics, again showing that the problem of dyslexia can be found as early as 1st grade. And if you don't screen, if we do, wait a second, they can't read by 3rd, well, then it's lost. Because you learn to read by grade 4 and then you read to learn, but by that time you haven't learned to read. So let me just ask of the, not you, Mr. Jeffries, because you're the kind of advocate, if I will, but of those who are the educational directors, what are you all specifically doing to screen for dyslexia? At what age do you begin the screen? And then after having screened, what is your approach to address the issue? Mr. Bumstead.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, we just had a pretty thorough discussion with our legislature this past legislative session on something we're calling the Nebraska Reading Improvement Act, and actually implementing some assessments kindergarten through 2nd grade and then into 3rd grade, and looking at what gaps there are in assessing a student's ability to read and where they're at, and addressing dyslexia and among other things, making sure that we have a fairly sweeping opportunity to analyze where every student is, and really working with school districts to do that. So,
and how are you screening?
Yes, there's a variety. I'm probably not going to do good on the various tests, but there are different tests that we're looking at, and actually some that we're having to recommend across the state. So we'll actually have a set of recommended assessments for various.
So this is a work in progress.
Yes, it is. It is.
And
correct.
if a child screens positively for at risk for dyslexia, what then is done?
So the expectation is that any student that would actually screen for dyslexia or any other reading, there would be appropriate strategies put in place for that individual.
And any elaboration on what that strategy is?
I probably won't do as well at the specific strategies, but that's the intent, that every school would have a strategy behind
Ms.
it.
Punty?
That is true in Delaware as well, and it depends on the student's exact strengths and weaknesses as we test for that, the dyslexia.
And what grade level do you screen, and is that screening universal?
It is universal. We have an observational set of records first, and then beyond that,
Now,
we
the
do something more
observational
formal.
is
in kindergarten, for example.
now, let me ask, because most kindergartners don't read.
Correct.
So when you say observational, what is being observed?
There are certain habits, certain practices, reversal of letters and things of that nature that begin to make you question if there might be some dyslexia involved. And there's great conversation between the reading specialist, and most schools have a reading specialist. They also have reading interventionists.
So is it more the observation than it is a formal screening process?
As you become 1st graders and 2nd graders, it becomes more formal as far as the identification
And
and
can I ask what
service.
that formal process is?
There are tests that are used, and I am not, at this moment, able to tell you the exact name of the test that's used in each case, but our reading specialists in schools have a variety of
And if a
things that they
child
use.
screens positively, I have limited time, I don't mean to be rude. If a child screens positive for being at risk, what is then done with she or he?
The reading interventionist may be working with that child. We also have multi-tiered system of support that we provide. It
Now, is this the
depends.
so-called RTI, or is this something which is more
It's
integrated?
much broader than that. And then we actually, as I mentioned, have reading specialists in each of our schools who will either directly provide services to students, or they may give certain tactics to be used in the classroom, depending on the child's degree of need.
Ms. Spearman?
In South Carolina, we're in our 4th year of legislation called Read to Succeed, which means that every teacher, including PE music teachers, have to have an additional add-on certificate in the tools of how to teach reading. Just last year, we passed dyslexia legislation that does require screening, K and 1st grade. It's done 3 times. All of our
What grades is this?
kindergarten and 1st grade.
That's great.
And we do...
And that is universal?
Yes, sir. And we have training modules for our teachers where they are now...
Can you share the results? Do you have those at the top of your head, if you will, of what % of your children are screening at risk?
This is our 1st year going into that, so
Got
I
it.
don't, but I can get you any other information that we might have. But we have really been working to make sure that, because our teachers were not equipped with the tools needed to address dyslexia, nor other reading problems as well.
I may have questions for the record. I'm out of time.
sir.
A real shout out. My wife has started a public charter school for children with dyslexia, but has worked with a school near Clemson, which is also a public charter school in South Carolina for those with dyslexia.
And if I may, we also have a tax credit that families can take advantage of called Exceptional SC, where children, if you're not being served in the public school, and if there is a private school that can help your child, those children can go tuition-free. And we have a dyslexia-focused school, private schools across the state where families can attend those as well.
Thank you all.